socials. Welcome to Being Omni Live. If you haven't figured it out by now, I'm Hillis. I am your host, creator, founder, healer, Omni Resonance Architect, all things energy. So if you have not tuned in to last week's episode of Being Omni, where I am talking about religion versus spirituality, my path, my purpose, and how I got here, how I got to be this individual. If you haven't been keeping up, check out my socials to view the information that I've been sharing over the past few weeks. In addition to that, uh, also I am also accepting donations. So if you click on the link in the description, more than welcome to send a donation. And lastly, before I get into today's topic of part two from last week, if you want to have some transformations and have want to really step into the embodiment of self, the full embodiment of self, I invite you to check out the link in the description as well, where you can see the energy transmissions, the downloadables, where I have a special technique that I've been using for quite some time. It's very transformative. It is called the Ankh Netter Birthright. Very transformative, very powerful. Share that technique. Also, the creating your own story meditation, a meditation that I created personally a few years ago and still use it to this day to assist in transforming the energetic memories of situations of you then to be able to create your own story. And lastly, one of my favorites is the light body activation. So you guys can check out the links in the descriptions, find what resonates with you, and we can go from there. But getting into today's topic, religion versus spirituality, part two. And like I said, if you didn't see last week's episode, go out, check that out, and then you can possibly catch the replay of this. But no need, because my story is my story, my journey is my journey. If you guys have questions along the way, please be sure to put your questions in the chat. So last week, I left off ending talking about my journey of spirituality, how I got here, how I arrived. But what's important about this journey with me, about what I have created, what I've cultivated, how I got to be this Omni Resonance Architect, is through experience, through knowledge, through wisdom, through everything that I've shared thus far about my life, my journey, and how I started out as a poet and ended up becoming a healer. But what is most important about this journey is that in the container that we call religion, there's this buffer, if you will. And this buffer is the church. It is the religious container. And in this buffer, you have a myriad of buffers, a myriad of layers, that make God untouchable, that makes the creator, the universe untouchable. And this all occurred, and I just discovered this in my recent studies in the past few years, is that this all began around the time of the death of the Osirian religion. When the Romans came to Egypt and they began to take over after Osiris was found dead, and Isis had to scatter his body in different parts. But with this was the death of shared wisdom and knowledge for anyone who sought it, and began the withholding of this information and wisdom that all could access. And with this withholding, created this buffer to where only royalty, high priest, priestesses could have access to this wisdom to get to God, to this energy, to this creator. And that has not changed over 2,000, 3,000 millennia, you know, thousands of years, to where this information of how to connect with source energy was guarded. And in the guarding of this information, we created this religious sect, thousands upon thousands of religions in the world presently, all teaching and pointing to the same thing, but in their cultural reference, in their cultural frame of mind, okay? This is how religion started. It started in the space of fear of regular common folk having access to wisdom and knowledge that they shouldn't have. But before Osiris died, back in Atlantis, back in Lemuria, back in Mu, back in this time, everyone had access to this knowledge. Everyone had access to this wisdom. But it was in the space of fear that this shifted. And so then, now in modern times, we have what is called the church, the preacher, the deacons, all the levels, that are sitting on a stage, in a pulpit, sharing you the word of God. Nothing wrong with this. Nothing wrong with this at all. Your belief is your belief. But in my path to spirituality, I found it very odd that you have to be anointed. You have to be the chosen to speak to Jesus, to speak to God. And even as a preacher, as a deacon, as someone of this higher order, so to speak, that you are still a middleman, that you still have to speak to Jesus, or that you still have to speak to someone else to get to God. You have to go through this hierarchy. But in times before the Roman times, you had a direct connection. You had this direct divine connection to source energy. But because of Roman culture and how that spilled over into modern times, this changed. This evolved. And so in order to speak to God, you had to be of a certain level. You had to be this certain way. You had to be of the cloth. You have to be this being. And so in my studies, I found all of this intriguing. And then what came about was, over the years of watching all the movies about Jesus, how Jesus was just a man and how Jesus was just this ordinary individual that was endowed with certain abilities because he was the Son of God. And over the years, it kind of struck me funny because in church, in religion, they teach you that you are also a child of God. But Jesus was the son and direct descendant of God. I'm like, well, how can we all be children? And Jesus is God's son. It just wasn't jiving with me. It wasn't sitting in my heart well. But I went along with the program because in society, the societal belief that we are in this program. And in this program, you follow the rules. You follow the program. You follow the default because there's no other way. Until you begin to understand the program that you were programmed with, the cultural beliefs, the normal way to connect with God was through Jesus, was through all these other means through prayer, you know. And this is what we did. We surrendered ourselves to the external. We surrendered ourselves to the external power of Jesus, to this deity. Because that's what Jesus was. Jesus was this deity. Never said it out loud, but this is what he is. If you look it up and see what a deity is, this is what Jesus was. He was identified as such. And so when you are in this program of understanding the religious sects, the religious dogmas, their beliefs in the societal space, that this energy of religion ensues in the programming to allow for you to continuously give away your light, to continuously give away to the external sources that are outside of self, which is fine. You know, you can believe in what you believe in. However, now in my path of spirituality, from religion to spirituality, oh, I just had a little glitch there. Wow. So in my path to understanding religious to spirituality, it is in this belief, knowing that there's always more, that our soul was designed to have a direct connection to source. Not all these filters. And our life has been so filtered that we've gotten used to having the buffers, the filters of how we communicate with source energy, how we even communicate with ourselves. You know, we communicate with ourselves by referring to ourselves in second person, third person, all these variations of self. You know, we talk to ourselves, that is, in a disconnected, disassociative way, you know, especially when we refer to the external source. Anything that's outside of ourselves, you know, that we were led to believe in, to be programmed to believe. And now, through my experiences of, you know, going to church, as I talked about last week, my experiences of living by example, my knowledge of what spirituality really is not living in a container, but it's also the direct connection to source energy. Source, meaning that you are going back home to which you come from. Energy, and as I am feeling this, the word energy also refers to what's in me. So, I'm just having a moment to really embody that, to really embody what that is. Source energy, source in me. And when you feel that, when you really truly begin to feel that and embody source energy, source in me, your perception begins to change. You no longer have a desire to be in a container that was programmed for you to stay in. Yes, people talk about these grand miracles and things that happen when you believe in God, when you believe in Jesus. You know, that's the external space. But when you begin to live by example of your own life, nothing else matters. You know, my life is my life and I live it how I live it. But when you embody source energy, you have this direct connection. When you embody the source energy, source in me, there's a direct connection to source energy. Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, all these deities were examples of our human potential. They were examples of what we in this vessel could do and be. But all of that changed. All of that shifted when we were taught, when we were shown that we could not be that in which we sought to be, which is freedom. And freedom is having this direct connection, living, loving yourself as you are, not as you was programmed and told to be. And this is living in the heart. This is knowing your own heart, trusting what your heart speaks, says, and does. Now, this is the reason why I started doing these episodes of Being Omni and I Am Hillis. Being Omni, I Am Hillis version subset series. For you to understand, number one, who I am, how I've grown, how I've expanded, and how you can do the same through your own personal teachings, your own guidance, because I didn't have the teachings, I didn't have the guidance, I just had the desire to learn more. And as I learned more, I learned that I, Hillis, am source energy. The embodiment of this energy lives in me, source in me. And when I began to understand this energy, when I began to understand source is me and I am source and source is in me, when I began to really embody this, really began to know this, that life began to change and things became a bit more challenging. But that was okay, because somehow things happened, because I believed in myself. I believed in source. I believed that I was not just a child of source. I began to believe I was a fractal, a part of this larger whole, a larger piece of this universe, a larger piece of all that it contains. And when you understand that you are more than just a mere being with limitations, and understand that you are a fractal of source energy, source in me, your life begins to shift. Your beliefs begin to change. You begin to have a different perspective on life. And with this perspective, things do change. Which is why, still to this day, I do my meditations, I have my rituals, I have my routines, I have my dance parties to where I allow myself to let go what no longer serves me. I do these things because they bring me joy. I do these things because it allows me to have that height of connection, that inner knowing that source is me, source energy is me, and I am source. Having the connection to the masters that are teaching me in the mystery schools now of this beautiful wisdom, this beautiful light, all of this that is contained within me. When you read books and knowledge and wisdom, and not just the Bible, because it's written in a way where it has to be deciphered in a poetic manner, and that's fine. Most all books have to be deciphered, if you don't understand the true meaning of what's written. But when you allow yourself to trust here in the heart and open up to receive the wisdom that you seek, it will appear to you. And this has been the bulk of my journey. At times when I used to go to bookstores, when bookstores were still in existence, books will literally fall off the shelves. It's like, you have to read this one. I remember, going to Borders back in the day. And when I really, really got into this and really committed to my journey, I remember spending almost $300 in books one day. I mean, who does that? Who spends like $300 in books in just one day? And I read them all. I still have them. Um, it's just one of these things that when you commit to something, when you go all in, your life begins to change because you commit to self. You commit to the journey. You commit to the path. You live your life as a spiritual being through example by being the light. And this is what Source is. Source is light. Source is darkness. Source is all things. And when you begin to see both the good and the bad of it all, you just begin to accept it. And this is the key that I have learned in my life, is that some things you can change, others you may not. And there's this wide array of things in between that you just can't. You just have to accept it. So when you allow yourself to relinquish the desire for control, everything else begins to open up. Everything else begins to unfold. Everything else begins to fall into place. And it is this placement where you have trust. Trust in yourself. Not trust in, the preachers or the deacons, people preaching from the pulpit. Not trust in a book that has been altered many times for their own gain. Not, not by the trust of society, not by anything. You begin to trust here. And no one else can tell you differently. I can't tell anyone differently if they believe it in their heart. I may confirm what they feel, confirm what they know. But it is in this space of trust where you simply begin to allow the energy of your journey to open up. And when you open up, you begin to feel, know, and understand. You begin to say yes to yourself. You begin to say yes to life, though it be challenging at times. And now those times are changing. As we are sitting in fourth D and some of us are moving into fifth density, we allow ourselves to say, hey, something's different. Hey, something's changing. Hey, it's me. I'm the one changing. I'm the one that's allowing. And then you begin to take ownership of self. Now, when you take ownership of self, there's no greater feeling in the world. You own who you are. You understand who you are. And you just allow that to simply be enough. You allow that to simply be enough. Because, dear ones, you are enough. Regardless of what anyone else has said or anyone else has done, you are enough. And let that be enough. And just sit with the energy of you being enough. The love, the joy, the peace, the happiness. And know that source energy lives in you. Because it is your source. Source energy sits in your heart. Sits right here in the middle of your chest. Sits in every single cell, every single strand of DNA. It is the light that you emit. When you give to yourself, when you give to love of self. It is that in which you already are and claim to be. No one else can tell you different. So you live in that energy. You honor that energy. You be that energy. So dear ones, I hope you enjoyed this time with me. Hope there was something here that resonated with you, to allow for you to be present. with yourself. Trust yourself. And it's okay to seek outside of yourself as long as it is in alignment with you and your being, with you and your heart. Allow that to be enough. The container, the rules, the dogma, the buffers of religion may or may not have served you, and that's fine. Whatever your path, whatever you believe, let that be for you. Let that be enough. And allow yourself to explore, to receive more, to be more, to just simply be. Till next week, beautiful ones, beautiful souls, I adore and appreciate each and every one of you. Join me live again where we're going to keep exploring. I am Hillis. Find out more little tidbits about my life, more things about me that you may or may not know. Till next time, have an amazing day, amazing week, and just trust in yourself.